Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Sports. And Jerry Flannery and Kwagga Smith have faced the media today in London ahead of the Japan test this weekend at Wembley Stadium and spoke about the fact that in many ways this tour is a bit of a World Cup simulation with regards to playing 5 different teams in 5 weeks, all presenting different challenges, slightly different conditions, and very quick turnaround times, which is a little bit different to what we saw in the Rugby Championship, and to a certain degree, even in the incoming series, where there are sort of much shorter windows, and you generally play similar, the same teams multiple times. So, for example, we went back-to-back games against Italy, then a game against Georgia, and then we went 2 games against Australia, 2 games against the All Blacks, 2 games against Argentina, and you kind of sort of get into a bit of a rhythm and you kind of understand how to prepare for each sort of team, which gets a full sort of 3-week focus. This tour, 5 games, 5 weeks, no sort of time off, is very different with that regards. And I think they're very much treating it like a little bit of a World Cup simulation, which is why they've taken probably a smaller squad than they might have. I think I was thinking potentially, up to a 40-man squad, given the fact that it is a 5-test series, which is very long. 4 tests is usually the maximum that we really see. 5 tests is quite strange. Obviously, in the World Cup, it's a 33-man squad, but given the fact that we're still trying to prepare for that, I wondered if we might have taken a bigger squad, but that's not the case. The main thing that Jerry Flannery said is that the main focus is going to be controlling their play better. But let's get into it. And before we do, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Right, so this is what they had to say. Saying that they're expecting a psyched-up Japanese side on the weekend. Speaking about the game over the weekend where Japan lost to Australia, he said Japan showed resilience in the first half despite the yellow cards, and they showed how well they can defend against one of the best sides, being Australia, who he mentions scoring 6 tries against us in the first game in the Castle Lager Rugby Championship. So we are aware that Japan are not just a really good attacking side, they can defend really well too. And in the last quarter, they came back into the game and they would be disappointed that they didn't win. And I think that's a very important thing to sort of talk about, given the fact that we have been at times vulnerable to comebacks. The Australia comeback, for example. And I think that was been sort of the big difference in the last month or so, was the fact that we really managed to surge in that stage of the game versus fade, which we saw even against Italy, for example, in that first test at Loftus. So there has kind of been a bit of that trend, which we seem to have gotten a lot better with dealing at in the last few tests, which is really, really important. He then spoke about the fact that Eddie Jones is obviously going to really have them psyched up, saying, I'm expecting that Eddie will be building up his team all week, and they'll believe that they can win and rewrite history by beating the Boks at Wembley. So we are very aware of their mindset coming into this game, meaning we need to ensure that we are as well prepared as we can be. It's true, Japan would have looked at the calendar this year, once this game was confirmed, and said, if there's one game they would like to win, it's probably this one, against the current form world champions, the world number ones. This is the game that they would have really liked to have created an upset. And we've only played Japan once in England and we've lost the game during the World Cup. So they will sort of feel that, they could potentially emulate that game and emulate a bit of history for them as well. He talks about the longer November test calendar. He said as follows. He said, it's a great challenge for us. You have a bit more of a runway coming into the Rugby Championship with a training week before you play, and you face the team the next week. So there isn't much to change. However, he said, but for this tour, we have 5 different opponents from week to week, and that is how the World Cup will work as well, with a short turnaround time between matches. So your ability to stay mentally fresh and keep bringing energy all the time will be good for us. And that, I think, for me, is probably the most important quote and the biggest takeaway, is the fact that it is a bit of a World Cup simulation. How do you get players to go over on what's going to be an intense tour, lots of traveling in between matches, and make sure they do not drop their standards, that they do not drop their energy, that they find a way of rotating the squad to ensure that that's always going to be the case. How do they use their resources adequately throughout the 5 tests to make sure that we can potentially go and get 5 wins? Because, that's kind of what you need to do in a World Cup. And I love the fact that they've mentioned that and that they're embracing that challenge. And that's going to be very much a big part of the tour, is the fact that they're going to lean into a bit of a World Cup simulation. Kwagga Smith spoke about the fact as well, saying 5 matches are a lot, but it's a great challenge for the squad because we need to be on form every weekend. All the test matches will also be tough, not just France and Ireland, but that's where we want to be. We want to measure ourselves and perform well as a team. He then spoke about the fact that a couple of the Japan-based players have been there for a while and they've been up to scratch, but also about the conditions playing at Wembley, which is not a traditional rugby stadium. There's been a rugby league game there recently, but and I'm very excited to see what the stadium looks like and how full we managed to get Wembley, which is obviously a very iconic stadium, but also massive. And he said the following. He said, a few of our Japanese-based players that arrived earlier in the week watched the league game at Wembley Stadium, and the pitch looks quite fast, which could suit the Japanese players who want to play fast rugby. He said, that said, it looks like a good pitch to play on, so I think it will be a good contest. The stadium is amazing, and it was a good game to watch, and also to get a feeling for the stadium and how it is over there. The big thing as well, and he mentions the fact that it is a hybrid pitch, not something that I think he's actually played on. A lot of the players who haven't gone over to England have actually or played in the URC recently, because obviously like Glasgow, for example, is a hybrid pitch, and there's quite a few hybrid pitches around that. He said a whole lot of URC teams have played on hybrid pitches and also in the Premiership. So it may be different for us this week, but that will certainly help going into the match in terms of being able to understand what a hybrid pitch feels like. He says while the players arrived in different stages over the last few days, and because of all the different franchises, the important thing is that he spoke about the fact that a lot of them managed to get training sessions in last week. He said, after the Rugby Championship, the Japanese-based players had time off, and then we flew to London last Tuesday, so we had a few days of training already, and we are really looking forward to the match and playing against Japan. And that is why I think we're already sort of getting a bit of an insight as to some of the selection that we're going to see for this weekend, because I think it is going to be a very Japan-based players heavy team selection. It's going to be leaning on them because they've been able to train, they've been able to be fresh, for example, whereas all your URC and your Premiership players have been playing recently, and a lot of them played in the last weekend, and then obviously you have to travel over there, you have to get the stiffness out, etc. Whereas your Japan-based players, like a Kwagga Smith, like a Malcolm Marks, a Jasper Wiese, a Cheslin Colby, a Marnie Liebach now, for example, they have been available and free, and they've been able to train and get prepare themselves for this weekend. And I think that we'll probably see a very large Japanese contingent in the game. In terms of the game, it starts at 4:10 South African Standard Time. The team will be announced tomorrow at 5 o'clock. We will be live for the team announcement, so you come and join us then. But until then, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.